Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Before we begin, I just wanted to say, obviously I'm not in my usual setup, so I apologize for any microphone problems or any background noise you guys might hear throughout the recording. I just wanted to have a quick chat about a rabbit hole I went down the other day, which is why we had to learn history and geography in school as kids. I always used to complain about those two classes in particular, but after learning more about the two subjects, I've wanted to share what I found with a little video essay style post, so I hope you guys enjoy and maybe even learn a little, and let's get into it. I always found history a bit of a bore, as I'm sure some of you guys did, but I went digging and found it is actually so beneficial for kids in school to be learning about it. A publication by Peter Stearns, published in 1998, did explain why history was important because even if the results of historical research are less tangible than other occupations, the research gathered can still tell us more about our present. Anyway, the idea is that kids get taught how to think like a historian rather than just the content, or it's also known as disciplinary thinking. But I know that's a bit complicated. Like, I found it a bit complicated when I first heard disciplinary thinking. So this is the best way I found to break it down. Disciplinary thinking, or historical literacy when it's related to history as a subject, is basically the skills and methods used by historians to bring the past to life. It didn't really answer my question on why we had to learn about it as kids, but then I found that if we can understand our past, we can understand our present. Like, for example, if we didn't have historians studying primary resources from the French Revolution, how would we know that France even had a monarchy, let alone why the French decided to revolt against them? Studying history allows us to make more sense of our present, and one day our present will make sense of our future. But it's not just the French that historians study. Obviously, that was just an example. I actually found that there are a lot of different types of historians. Basically, historians use different theoretical lenses to study different concepts. Like, there will be historians who study history with the perspective of feminism or Marxism, or sometimes they'll study countries that were colonized and how that colonization affected the country's development and cultures. Another aspect of historical literacy is being able to pick up bias in primary sources. And using the French again as an example, you wouldn't find an old drawing of King Louis XVI with the body of a pig and just assume that at one point the French had a half person, a half pig as a monarch. It's all about bias and perspective. A publication made by W.K. Hancock said perspective and bias are two of the most important skills a historian can have. It's such an important part of their disciplinary thinking, and using their skills as well as key concepts and prior knowledge to pick apart primary resources can tell the story of our past in order to explain our present. After finding out more about history, I wanted to know even more about geography, as I never found geography that interesting, but I thought, surely if there's this much behind history, there's a good reason as to why we learn geography. I always thought it was about rocks and the weather, but it's actually a lot more than that. Geographers study not only Earth's physical features, like the weather and the environment, but also human behaviors and our societies. I was shocked to know they study so much. They study how our environment affects us, like cultures, clothing, and traditional food. If you live in a colder place, the chances are your traditional clothing may be a lot thicker and a lot warmer just because of how the environment affects us. But it also showed how we affect our environment and how we can fix our behavior to be more sustainable. It's not just the wide range of knowledge that they study that's interesting. They also have their own disciplinary thinking, just like history, and use different methods and skills when compared to history. When historians use primary and secondary sources, geographers use field studies and statistics like wind speed, temperature, remote sensing, and qualitative interviews to research more about our physical Earth. Geography helps us to interpret our world by using the physical Earth to explain societies and cultures through different perspectives, like post-colonial and postmodern ones, and they do this by investigating it through measurements and fieldwork. I didn't really understand why we had to learn it in school though, or why it's even in the Australian curriculum, but it does help people develop an understanding of our world and kind of an appreciation for it as well. So after learning about how historians and geographers interpret and investigate our world and past to make more sense of why we live the way we do, I wanted to know about why children have to learn it in schools, and more importantly, how children learn it. So I used the ACAR syllabus as I wanted to get a more countrywide perspective on it, and I found that the curriculum does in fact include not only the content that children need to learn about history and geography, but the curriculum uses the content as an example to help children learn about how to think like a historian or a geographer, or it teaches them disciplinary thinking. The curriculum even breaks these skills down in a structured way. There's a skills strand with categories like questioning and researching, analyze, evaluating, and communicating, and these all mirror the steps that real historians take. Kids are expected to question evidence, consider perspectives, and evaluate how interpretations differ. They also learn core historical concepts like cause and effect, continuity, and change, significant, and perspectives. Basically, the curriculum is designed to make students think historically and not just about history. There's disciplinary thinking in action, and they're learning how to handle evidence, interpret stories, and debate ideas. But something I noticed while digging around, while the curriculum does talk about global perspectives, it doesn't really go deep into the global south, at least not explicitly. There's a general emphasis on diversity, global interconnections, and understanding how Australia fits into the wider world, but the global south and often the perspectives that come with the global south don't really appear. In practice, that means students might learn about regions like Africa, Asia, and South America in various historical contexts, for example, colonization, trade, or cultural exchange, but the framing often still comes from a Western or Australian viewpoint. The curriculum definitely encourages students to examine different perspectives and to recognize inequality and change over time, which can open the door to thinking critically about the global south. However, it doesn't explicitly challenge the traditional global hierarchies that have shaped how history is told. So if you're a bit like me and you care about whether kids are being taught to see history through multiple lenses and not just Western ones, this is kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, the tools for disciplinary thinking are absolutely there. Kids learn to question, to investigate, and interpret evidence, all of which are essential skills for recognizing bias and unpacking power structures. But on the other hand, the curriculum doesn't always push students to apply those skill tools to global inequity or to post-colonial perspectives. It's more subtle. Teachers would need to make those connections themselves. Still, I think that's what makes this so interesting. The curriculum lays the groundwork for deep critical thinking. It just needs educators who are willing to stretch it further. If history teaching embraces not only disciplinary methods but also global inclusivity, then we'd be giving students the full picture on how interconnected and unequal our world has been. And honestly, that's the kind of thinking I believe we need future generations to challenge. We need them to challenge old narratives and build more equal ones and have a more complete understanding and have multiple perspectives. So yes, disciplinary thinking definitely included. The global south, not so much, but I think it's a conversation worth having. Anyways, that's about it. If any of you want to know more about what I found or where I've learned everything from this video essay from, I've left a bibliography in the description of this video. And if you're still here, thanks for sticking around, learning with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you then.